A powerful sultan and an empty throne, 10 years of failure. The doctors had delivered their verdict. Sultan Rashid would never have children. But one night changed everything. A simple healer, a woman without a name or fortune, spent a single night in his chambers. Weeks later, the impossible happened. She was pregnant with triplets. The entire palace called her a liar, an impostor, and a witch. They demanded her execution. But the Sultan's reaction to the news left everyone speechless. No one expected that reaction. No one. This is the story of Nala and the miracle that changed an empire. Istanbul, 1547. The sun set on the minarets of Topkapı Palace like molten gold. The domes glistened and the gardens bloomed. The Ottoman Empire was at its peak. Yet within those walls was a broken man, Sultan Rashid ibn Ahmad. He was 38 years old with a firm arm, eyes as black as a moonless night, and broad shoulders that carried the weight of an empire and a curse. 10 years. 10 years of trying to have a child. 10 years of marriages, hopes, and failures. 3 wives had passed through his bed. None had conceived. Doctors examined him in secret. Healers gave him herbs. Imams prayed for him. Nothing worked. The diagnosis came as a death sentence. Sultan Rashid was sterile. He was a ruler without an heir, a throne without a future, and a man without a legacy. That night, Rashid walked alone through the corridors of Erin. His footsteps echoed on the cold marble floor. Candles cast flickering shadows on the lapis mosaic walls. The scent of amber incense hung heavily in the air, suffocating like his destiny. He stopped in front of a window. Outside, the Bosphorus glistened under the moonlight. The waters divided 2 continents, east and west, but no bridge could span the chasm he felt in his chest. "My lord," said the voice of his vizier, Faisal, from the shadows. He was a thin man with a gray beard and calculating eyes. The council asked again about the heir. Rashid did not respond. They suggested that he name his nephew Kemal as his successor. "Kemal is a coward." The Sultan's voice came out hoarse. "He is a drunkard and a waste of royal blood." "Then, my lord, what shall we do?" Silence. Rashid closed his eyes. He remembered his father, the great Sultan Ahmed, on his deathbed. His words still burned. "A sultan without a son is a tree without roots. The wind will blow it down." And Rashid was that tree, strong on the outside and dead on the inside. The nights were the worst, when the palace slept and he lay awake, staring at the ceiling and wondering what he had done wrong and why Allah had punished him so severely. He had conquered cities, expanded the empire, and built mosques that touched the sky, yet he could not create life. And that was slowly killing him. 400 kilometers away, in a forgotten village near Konya, another soul was suffering under the same sky. Nahla was 24 years old with cinnamon skin and honey-colored eyes that seemed to hold all the secrets of the desert. Her hair was as black as a raven's wing and was always tucked under a humble headscarf. She had been orphaned since the age of 12. She was raised by an elderly healer who taught her about the healing powers of herbs. Lavender to calm, saffron to strengthen, and mint to heal. But the old woman had died a month ago. Now Nala was completely alone. She lived in a mud house on the edge of the village. The neighbors looked at her with suspicion. A woman alone and a healer. To them, she was almost a witch. One morning, Nala was gathering herbs in the field when she heard them. Horses, the sound of hooves against dry earth, screams. The village was in a state of panic. It was the Sultan's men. They had come to recruit servants for the palace. Nala ran, but it wasn't enough. A hand grabbed her arm and threw her to the ground. Dust filled her mouth. "She'll do," said a deep voice. "She's young, she's clean." "No, let me go!" But her cries were lost in the wind. They put her in a cart with other women. They were all crying and trembling. The journey to Istanbul had begun, and Nahla did not know, could not know then, that this trip would change everything. That in a few weeks her destiny would become entwined with that of the most powerful man in the empire. That a single night would transform her life forever, and that she, an orphaned healer from a forgotten village, would carry an impossible miracle in her womb. 3 lives, 3 heirs to the Sultan, who could not have children. As the carriage moved towards the horizon and the sun set, somewhere in Topkapi Palace, Sultan Rashid looked at the stars. unaware that his destiny had just changed, that Allah had heard his pleas, and that the miracle was already on its way. The cart moved forward relentlessly. For 5 days, Nahla and the other women traveled, crammed between wood and straw. The heat was unbearable. The smell of sweat and fear permeated every breath. Nahla did not cry. She had learned long ago that tears changed nothing. She just watched, waited, and survived. A young girl next to her trembled uncontrollably. Her name was Fatma. Barely 16 years old, her huge eyes were filled with terror. "They're going to sell us," Fatma whispered. "I've heard stories. The arena is a golden prison." "No," Nala replied firmly. "It's just a place. Places don't define who we are." Fatma looked at her as if she had said something crazy, but Nahala believed it. She had to believe it. It was the only thing that kept her sane. On the 6th day they arrived in Istanbul. Nothing could have prepared her for what she saw. The walls rose like stone giants. The minarets pierced the sky. In the distance, the Bosphorus shimmered, dividing the land between two worlds. The air smelled of salt, spices, and possibility. In the center of it all stood Topkapi Palace, immense, imposing, and terrifying. They were led through the gate of happiness. How ironic! Nala almost wanted to laugh. Happiness was the last thing she had felt. They were bathed, dressed, and examined like cattle at a market. "This one has the hands of a healer," said an older woman. "Lakira Jatun is in charge of the arena. We will put her in the medicinal gardens." And so Nala began her new life. The first few weeks were a silent hell. The arena was a labyrinth of secret corridors and poison disguised as smiles. The concubines looked at her with contempt. She was a peasant, a nobody. She wasn't even beautiful by palace standards. Too thin, too dark, too common. But Nakhla had something they didn't: knowledge. The herbs she grew could cure headaches. Her ointments healed burns. Her teas helped people to sleep. Gradually, the very women who had despised her began to seek her out in secret. "Nala, my back is killing me. Nala, I can't sleep. I can't sleep. Nala, I have a fever." She helped everyone without resentment or charge. Her kindness was genuine, which confused everyone. One night under a full moon, everything changed. The palace was celebrating Sultan Rashid's 39th birthday. The gardens were lit with thousands of candles. Music floated through the air. The scent of roses and jasmine was intoxicating. Nala should not have been there. She should have been in the medicinal gardens, far from the party. But Fatma had begged her to accompany her. "I just want to watch from afar," she pleaded. "Please, Najla." And she gave in. She always gave in when someone needed something. They hid behind some pink oleander bushes. From there, they could see the cathedral courtyard, the nobles, the musicians, and the dancers. Then she saw him, Sultan Rashid, sitting on a raised throne. He was dressed in a dark blue silk tunic embroidered with gold and wore a turban adorned with an emerald the size of a quail's egg. He was imposing and magnificent, but Nala did not see the Sultan. She saw his empty, sad eyes, which were so lonely that they made her chest ache. "This man is dying inside," she thought. She did not know how or why, but she felt it. The party continued as Rashid rose. He needed air, space, and silence. The flatterers exhausted him, and the fake smiles made him feel sick. Every time someone mentioned her, he felt as if a dagger were being thrust into him. He walked towards the back garden, an area rarely visited by others where he could breathe. And then he saw her, a woman kneeling by the fountain, picking rose petals out of the water. She wasn't wearing the concubine's jewels or elaborate makeup. She was wearing just a simple green linen dress and a white scarf, but there was something about her. "Who are you?" His voice sounded harsher than he intended. Nala stood up abruptly. Her heart was beating like a war drum. "I'm Nala, my lord. I work in the medicinal gardens." "And what are you doing here?" She swallowed hard. Telling the truth was risky. Lying would be worse. "I was collecting rose petals. The full moon's water enhances their healing properties." Rashid looked at her. He expected excuses, pleas, and fear, but she just explained, as if he were a normal man asking a normal question. "Healing properties," he repeated, almost amused. "Do you believe in such things?" "I have seen what they can do." my lord. Herbs can heal what doctors cannot. Silence. Rashid should have left. He should have ignored her, but something held him back. What do rose petals heal? Nala looked him straight in the eye. No one did that. No one dared. A broken heart, my lord. The world stood still. Rashid felt as if she had seen through all his masks and armor to the boy inside who just wanted a son. He did not answer. He simply turned and walked towards the palace. But that night, for the first time in years, he could not forget her face. 3 days later, he sent for her. 7 weeks later, dawn broke warmly over the palace gardens. Birds sang among the cypress trees. Dew glistened on the mint and basil leaves that Nahla tended with devotion. But that morning she did not sing as she usually did. Instead, she was kneeling next to a lavender bush, one hand pressed against her belly, eyes closed. The nausea had returned. She had felt this way for days. She experienced dizziness upon waking, was disgusted by certain smells, had sensitive breasts, and felt fatigued even after sleeping for 10 hours. At first, she thought it was the change of season. Then she thought she had eaten something bad. After that, she convinced herself it was just stress, but her body knew the truth before her mind did. And that morning, finally, her mind accepted what her body had been screaming all along. She was pregnant. She was pregnant. The memory of that night hit her like a wave. 3 days after the encounter at the fountain, a eunuch arrived at the medicinal gardens. "The Sultan requires your services," he said. "He has insomnia." Nala had prepared an infusion of valerian and lime blossom. With her heart in her mouth, she followed the eunuch through the palace corridors to the royal chambers. The room was immense, adorned with red silk curtains and thick Persian carpets that she could sink into. The scent of sandalwood wafted through the air. There he was, Rashid, sitting by the window and gazing out at the night. He was not wearing his turban or his jewels. He was just a man, exhausted by the weight of his crown. "Leave us," he ordered the eunuch. Nala prepared the tea in silence. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured the golden liquid into a porcelain cup. "My lord, this will help you. Why are you not afraid of me?" The question took her by surprise. "Everyone fears me," Rashid continued. "My Wibisi, my advisors, my generals. But you look at me as if I were nobody." Nazla set the cup down on the table. "We are all nobodies before Allah, my lord. Sultans and peasants, kings and beggars. In the end, we are all dust." Rashid looked at her. A bitter smile crossed his lips. "Dust," he repeated. "Dust without an heir. Dust with no future." And then for the first time he revealed his truth to someone. Not to the vizier, not to the doctors, not to any of his wives, but to her, the healer of the gardens. He told her about the 10 years of failure, the humiliating treatments, the diagnosis that had condemned him, and the shame that gnawed at him every day. Nala listened without interrupting, without judging, and without offering false hope. When he had finished, she simply said, "The human body is a mystery, my lord. I have seen women whom doctors declared barren give birth to twins. I have seen men who were said to be beyond help recover with a simple herb. Medicine does not know everything. Only Allah knows our destiny." Rashid looked at her as if she were the first honest person he had met in years. "Do you think there is hope for me?" "I believe that giving up is the only sure way to fail." That night, something changed between them. They talked until dawn about herbs and stars, dreams and fears, and the loneliness they both knew too well. When the sun began to rise on the horizon, Rashid kissed her. It was gentle and timid, as if he couldn't quite believe what he was doing. She didn't stop him. Just for one night. There were no promises or words at dawn. Nala returned to the palace gardens before anyone else was awake. Rashid did not send for her again. They both believed it was a secret they would take to their graves. But life had other plans. 7 weeks later, Nala was kneeling among the lavender and facing reality. She was pregnant by the Sultan, a man the entire empire knew to be sterile. "It can't be," she whispered to herself. "It can't be a." But the signs were unmistakable. She knew the human body, she knew herbs, she knew the symptoms. She was pregnant, there was no doubt about it. Panic overwhelmed her. If anyone found out, she would be accused of adultery and treason. No one would believe that the child was the Sultan's. Not even he would believe it. She would be executed, stoned to death. Her name would become synonymous with shame. She had to escape. She had to flee the palace before her belly began to show. But when she tried to get up, her legs wouldn't respond. Then she heard footsteps and music. Nala was Fatma, her only friend. The young woman looked at her with wide eyes. "Are you all right? You're as pale as a ghost." Nala tried to smile. "I failed miserably. I just felt sick. It's the heat." But Fatma was no fool. She had grown up in a village. She had seen pregnant women all her life. Her eyes dropped to Nala's belly, then rose to her face, and terror filled her gaze. "Nala," she whispered, "what have you done?" That night in the small room they shared, Nala told her everything. The fountain, the tea, the conversation, the night. Fatma listened with her mouth open, unable to process what she was hearing. The Sultan, Sultan Rashid, the one who cannot have children. "Yes, Nala, they will kill you. They will accuse you of lying, of sleeping with another man." "I know." Silence. Fatma paced back and forth, wringing her hands. "You have to run away. Tonight I can distract the guards. But where will I go?" Nagla's voice was empty. Without money or family, she had a baby in her womb. "It's better than dying." Nagla closed her eyes. She had spent the whole afternoon thinking and calculating, looking for a way out. There wasn't one. If she ran away, she would die along the way. If she stayed, they would kill her once they found out she was pregnant. There was only one option. One act of absolute madness, one leap into the void. "I'm going to tell him the truth," she said. Finally, Fatma stopped walking. "What?" "I'm going to tell the Sultan that I'm pregnant with his child. You're mad, he won't believe you. No one will believe you. Maybe not, but if there's anyone in this palace who knows it's possible, it's him. He was there. He knows what happened." Fatma looked at her as if she had lost her mind. And perhaps she had, but Nagla had nothing to lose but her life and the lives of her 3 unborn children. 3. Arain's doctor. He confirmed it that afternoon when Nagla pretended to have stomach pains. "Triplets," the old man had said, his eyes wide. "You are expecting triplets. 3 miracles, or 3 death sentences. It depends on the man, on his faith, on his desperation." Nala prayed that night as she had never prayed before, and at dawn she requested an audience with the Sultan. The throne room was empty. Rashid had ordered that they be left alone. There was something in Nala's message, a matter of life and death, that had intrigued him enough to grant her a private audience. He was sitting on a divan by the window, far from the official throne. He was dressed in a simple white linen tunic, with no jewels or crown, as if he wanted to be just a man for this conversation. When Nagla entered, he immediately noticed that something had changed. She was paler and thinner. Her eyes, which had always shone with determination, now showed deep fear. "Come closer," he ordered, his voice sounding softer than usual. Nala walked slowly. Each step was a battle, each breath an effort. She knelt 3 meters away from him, the required distance. "My lord, thank you for receiving me." Rashid watched her silently, waiting. "Do you have something to tell me? Is there something you need to tell me that cannot wait? Yes. Then speak." Nala looked up and looked him straight in the eye as she uttered the words that would change everything. "I am pregnant with your child, my lord. I am expecting triplets." The silence that followed was deafening. Rashid did not move or blink. He looked like a marble statue. Then slowly his expression began to change. First came pure and absolute disbelief. Then came fury. "What did you say?" His voice was icy and dangerous. "I heard what you said," I replied. He stood up abruptly. "You take me for a fool. Do you think you can come here and lie to me? They are not lies, my lord. I am barren." His shout echoed off the walls. 10 years without being able to conceive. And now you come to tell me that you are expecting my triplets? Nala did not back down, even though every fiber of her being told her to run away. "I have no explanation, my lord. I only know what I know. You were the only man to ever touch me. There has never been another before or since." Rashid paced like a caged lion, breathing heavily with clenched fists. "Do you expect me to believe you? A servant? A nobody? I hope you remember that night, my lord. You told me about your pain, your shame, and your 10 years of failure. No one else knows those details. No one. He stopped. He looked at her with burning eyes. You could have heard about it from someone else. Rumors fly in this palace. They know that you cried when you told me about your father. They know you told me that you feel like a tree without roots. Rashid felt as if he had been struck in the chest. He had never told anyone else those words. I may be lying about the babies, Nala continued, but I cannot be lying about that night because you know exactly what happened. The Sultan slumped onto the divan, his head in his hands, his mind in chaos. It couldn't be true. It was impossible. The doctors had said it 1,000 times. But what if they were wrong? What if there was a chance, even a slim one? What if? Why should I believe you? His voice was now a whisper. Give me a reason. Nagla moved a little closer, breaking protocol and risking everything. I have nothing to gain by lying, my lord, she said. If I lie, I will die when the truth comes out. If I tell the truth, I will probably die too because no one will believe me. So why did you come? Why didn't you run away? Because these babies deserve to know their father. Even if he doesn't want them and hates me, they are innocent. Rashid looked up. Nala had tears in her eyes, but they weren't from fear. They were from determination. This woman was willing to die for the truth. Who would do that for a lie? Who would sacrifice themselves like that for a lie? 3, he whispered. You said triplets. Arain's doctor confirmed it. 3 children. Rashid felt something strange in his chest. It was a feeling he hadn't experienced in 10 years. Hope, small, fragile, and dangerous. But there it was. If I find out you're lying, he began, I'm not lying. If I find out that another man has touched you, may Allah strike me down. There was silence, long and tense, charged with electricity. Finally, Rashid made a decision. You will be watched every moment, every breath. No one will know about this until I decide. Yes, my lord. And if at any time I discover a lie, no matter how small. He did not finish the sentence. It was not necessary. Nala nodded. I understand. You may leave. She got up and walked towards the door. But before she could leave, Rashid's voice stopped her. Nala turned around. The Sultan looked at her with an expression she could not decipher. If it is true, if they really are mine, I owe you more than I could ever repay. Nala bowed her head. I do not want payment, my lord. I only want my children to live. She left, leaving Rashid alone with his thoughts and with a flame of hope that had not burned in his chest for 10 years. The news spread like poison in clear water. No one knew how. Perhaps a eunuch had overheard too much. Or maybe a maid had seen Nala leave the private audience. Or maybe the palace walls really did have ears. Within 3 days, the whole of Iran was abuzz with gossip. The healer is pregnant. She says it's the Sultan's. Impossible. He is sterile. She is a liar and a social climber. She deserves death. The words flew like poisoned arrows, all pointing to the first to act. Safil Hatun, the Sultan's chief wife. 40 years of palace intrigue and eyes as cold as Damascus steel. She had been in the harem for 20 years and had never conceived. When she heard the rumors, her face showed no emotion. But inside, she burned with rage at the thought of a peasant girl, a garden servant, pretending to give the Sultan what she could never give him, a child. Unacceptable. She called a secret meeting in her chambers. She invited the other 2 wives, Dilara and Sumrat, as well as Vizier Faisal, who had always been her ally in the shadows. This situation is an affront, Safil began, serving herself with steady hands. It is a lie that threatens the stability of the empire. Dilara, the youngest of the wives, nodded nervously. But what if it's true? The look Safil gave her would have frozen the desert. Right? The Sultan is sterile. The best doctors in the empire confirmed it. And yet here is some nobody claiming to be pregnant with his triplets. She is clearly an imposter. Sumrat, the second wife, intervened, her voice full of venom. She probably slept with a guard and now wants to save her miserable life by blaming the Sultan. Vizier Faisal remained silent, listening and calculating. Finally he said, it is serious. To accuse the Sultan of being deceived is to accuse him of lacking intelligence. We must act with caution. Be careful. Safil slammed down her cup. While that woman poisons my husband's mind with fantasies, I propose a solution. Faisal continued, a private court where the woman will be questioned in present evidence. We can expose her before the Sultan. The three wives exchanged glances. What if she doesn't confess? Asked Alara. Everyone confesses, replied Faisal with a cold smile. Eventually Nala was summoned. 3 days later, she was taken to a room in the oldest wing of the palace. The room had dark stone walls and torches casting dancing shadows. The air was filled with the smell of dampness and fear. When she entered, she saw the three wives seated on raised divans, the vizier standing beside them, and several armed guards lurking in the shadows. There was no chair for her. She would have to stand like a criminal before her judges. Kneel, Safi ordered. Nala obeyed. The stone floor was cold. Her knees hurt almost immediately. Do you know why you are here? I suspect so, madam. Then you know you have committed an unforgivable crime, lying about the paternity of an imperial heir. I have not lied. Silence, Safil stood up. You have no right to speak until I allow you to. Nala lowered her gaze. Her heart was beating so loudly that she was sure everyone could hear it. Sultan Rashid is sterile, Tipi, Safil continued, walking around Nakhla like a hawk circling its prey. This is not a rumor. It is a medical fact, documented by the best doctors in the empire. 10 years without heirs, Sumrat added. 3 wives and dozens of concubines, and still nothing. And you expect us to believe that one night with you changed everything. Safil's voice dripped with contempt. What is so special about you? You're a witch. You used black magic. I am not a witch, Nala replied in a trembling voice. I'm just a woman. A lying woman. I don't lie. Safil crouched down in front of her. Their eyes were inches apart. Last chance. Confess who the real father is. A guard, a merchant. Whoever it is, confess and your death will be quick. Deny it and you will suffer. Nala looked him straight in the eye. There is no other father, only Sultan Rashid. Safil straightened up with a cruel smile. Very well, so be it. She turned to the guards. Take her to the dungeons. No food or water until she changes her mind. You can't do that, Nagla cried. I'm pregnant. You'll kill the babies. What babies? Amrut replied. Some peasants' bastards. The empire has no need of them. The guards approached. Nagla felt panic take hold of her. She was going to die. Her children were going to die too. Then suddenly they stopped. A voice boomed through the room like thunder. Everyone turned toward the door. There, with eyes burning with fury, stood Sultan Rashid. What is the meaning of this? His voice was both icy and fiery. Safil quickly regained her composure. My lord husband, she said, we were only questioning this woman. Without my permission, Rashid walked to the center of the room and ordered someone under my protection to be locked up. Her protection. The surprise in Safil's voice was genuine. My lord, this woman is a liar. That is for me to decide. No, you. Silence fell like a guillotine. Rashid looked at Nagla, who was still kneeling on the floor. Rise. She obeyed, her legs trembling. This woman will remain in the imperial wing, announced the Sultan. Under my direct supervision. No one will touch her or question her. No one will approach her without my express permission. My lord, protested Faisal, this is irregular. The council must... The council does not decide on my private life. I do. Rashid took Nala by the arm and guided her towards the door. Before leaving, however, he turned around once more. Let it be clear, if anyone harms this woman or what she carries within her, I will consider it treason. You know how I punish treason. He left behind 3 humiliated wives, a vizier with ruined plans, and the first seeds of a silent war. Nala was installed in the most beautiful chambers she had ever seen, a room overlooking the tulip garden. The walls were covered with blue and white Iznik tiles. Silk curtains danced in the breeze from the Bosphorus. There was a bed so large that an entire family could sleep in it. It was a golden cage, beautiful and comfortable, but a cage nonetheless. 2 eunuchs guarded her door day and night. Layla, her personal maid, attended to her every need. The imperial physician, Jim Yunus, visited her every morning to monitor her pregnancy. Nala could not go out, receive visitors, or communicate with anyone except her designated guards. Although the Sultan had promised to protect her, he had also isolated her from the world. Meanwhile, Rashid became a man possessed, not by desire or love, but by hope. The little flame that Nahla had lit grew every day, consuming every thought, every dream, and every waking moment. What if it's true? What if they really are mine? What if I'm finally going to be a father? The question consumed him. By day, he ruled the empire with an iron fist. He received ambassadors, signed decrees, and planned military campaigns. By night, however, he couldn't sleep. He wandered the palace corridors like a ghost. He always ended up in front of Nala's door, watching the shadows through the curtains and wondering what she might be dreaming about. His behavior did not go unnoticed. "The Sultan is obsessed," whispered the servants. "He has lost his mind," murmured the advisors. "That witch has bewitched him," spat the wives. But Rashid listened to no one. He had made up his mind. He was going to believe, not because he had proof or because logic supported it, but because he needed to believe. Because 10 years of despair had brought him to the brink of the abyss, and this was his only lifeline. One night, he finally visited her. He entered silently. Nala was sitting by the window looking at the moon. Her pregnancy was beginning to show slightly. 3 months. "My lord?" she said, rising with a start. "I wasn't expecting you. Please, sit down." Rashid sat down opposite her. He watched her silently for a long moment. "How are you feeling?" "Fine. The doctor says the babies are growing healthily. All 3 of them. All 3. Silence. "Nala, I need you to understand something." She waited. "All my life I have been the Sultan, the ruler, the conqueror. But within these walls I am just a man. A man who has failed at the one thing that really matters." His voice trembled. It was the first time Nala had ever seen him so vulnerable. "A legacy, a family, children who carry my blood when I am gone. That's all I've ever wanted, and for 10 years I was denied it." "My lord, don't interrupt me. I need to say this." Nala nodded. "When you came to me with that news, my first instinct was rage. I thought it was another lie, another disappointment, another stab in the back." "I understand that," she continued, "but then I remembered that night, how you looked at me, how you listened to me. No one had ever treated me like that before, as if I were human." Rashid stood up and walked over to the window. "I have no proof that those babies are mine. The doctors say it's impossible. My wives say you're lying. My vizier thinks you're manipulating me. And what do you think?" Nala's voice was barely a whisper. Rashid turned and looked her straight in the eye. "I believe you." The words floated in the air like a prayer, not because I have proof and not because it's logical. "I believe you because, when you told me the truth, you didn't tremble or beg. You simply spoke with the same honesty as you did that night at the fountain." Nal felt tears welling up in her eyes. "My lord, thank you." "Don't thank me yet." Rashid sat back down. "Believing is not enough. I need the empire to believe, and for that, I need answers. Answers. Yakim Yunus is investigating. Something must have changed in my body. Something had to make this possible. If I can prove that my infertility has been reversed, then no one will doubt it." Nagla finished. "Exactly." Rashid took her hand. It was an unexpected, intimate gesture. "I promise you something, Nahlahom. If those babies are mine, and I know they are in my heart, you will be honored, protected, and elevated to a position beyond question. I don't want honor. I just want my children to live. They will live. I give you my word." They looked at each other in silence. Two people united by an impossible miracle. A broken sultan who had found hope, and an orphan who had found purpose. And 3 little hearts beating between them. Rashid's obsession was slowly transforming. It was no longer just hope. It was something deeper and more dangerous that closely resembled love. Elamunis was the most respected doctor in the Ottoman Empire. 72 years old with a snow-white beard and wrinkled hands that had healed 3 generations of sultans, he had small but penetrating eyes capable of seeing what others ignored. When Rashid ordered him to investigate his infertility, the old man asked no questions. He merely nodded and locked himself in his archives for a week. He reviewed every document, every treatment, and every herb administered in the last 10 years. And on the seventh day, he found something. "My lord," he said, "I need to speak with you. It is urgent." Rashid received the doctor in his private study. It was past midnight. Candles cast dancing shadows on the maps of conquests that adorned the walls. "What did you discover?" The Hakim unfolded an ancient parchment on the table. "Do you remember the illness that afflicted you about a year ago, my lord?" Rashid frowned, trying to remember. Vaguely, fevers and muscle aches. It passed in a few weeks. Exactly. The symptoms were consistent with desert fever. Nothing serious. "But the treatment I administered to you," the old man said, pointing to a note on the parchment, "it included a very particular herb, golden ashwagandha, an extremely rare variety that only grows in the mountains of northern Persia." "What is so special about that?" "I used it for its anti-fever properties," he continued, "but when I began this research, I found references to it in ancient texts." The Joachim took out another parchment, this one more yellowed and fragile. A 10th century Persian physician had described cases of sterile men who had regained their ability to father children after consuming this herb for several weeks. Rashid felt his heart stop. "You're saying—" "I'm saying it's possible, my lord. I can't say for sure. Medicine is not an exact science, but there are precedents and documented cases." The Sultan slumped back in his chair. All this time, it was just an herb. The human body is a mystery. Sometimes, what harms it can also heal it. And vice versa. The fever that made him ill may have weakened his system enough for the ashwagandha to have an unexpected effect. Silence. Rashid stared at the parchment as if it were a message from the Almighty. 10 years of suffering, 10 years of shame. And the answer had been an herb. "Can you prove it?" he finally asked. "Before the council, before the handcuffs, before the entire empire." The Yakim thought about it. "I can present the evidence. The ancient texts, the dates of the treatment, and how they coincide with the moment of conception. It's not absolute proof, but it's enough to cast reasonable doubt." Reasonable doubt. If everyone was previously certain that you could not father a child, they will now have to admit that it was possible. And possibility, my lord, is a powerful weapon. Rashid nodded slowly. "Do it. Prepare your presentation. I want the entire council to hear it." "Yes, my lord." The old man began to gather his scrolls, but Rashid stopped him. "Yakim, do you think these are mine?" The doctor looked at him with his wise eyes. "I have examined the woman, my lord. I have seen many pregnant women in my life, as well as many liars. That young woman is not lying. Her body is not lying. What will you do when those babies are born? Features do not deceive. Blood speaks, and I believe it will speak in your favor." He bowed and left. Rashid was left alone, looking at the scrolls. The golden ashwagandha, the miracle herb. It was neither magic nor witchcraft. It was medicine and science, and the will of Allah. And for the first time in 10 years, Rashid knew that he was going to be a father. He could hardly believe it. He had not expected it. He knew it with a certainty that came from the depths of his soul. That night, he went to Nahla's chambers. He entered without warning. She was asleep with one hand on her growing belly. He knelt beside her bed. For the first time in his adult life, the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire wept. Tears of relief, gratitude, and hope fulfilled. "Thank you," he whispered, even though she couldn't hear him. "Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for believing when no one else did. Thank you for giving me everything." He stayed there until dawn, watching over her as she slept, protecting his miracle, his 3 miracles. The following months were the longest of Nala's life. Her belly grew and the babies moved. El Jaquim Yunus had presented his evidence to the council, and although not everyone was convinced, nobody dared call Nala a liar out loud anymore. The mere possibility had sown the seed of doubt, and the Sultan's protection had instilled fear. But that did not stop her enemies. Safiye Hatun was giving up. If she could not attack Nala directly, she would do so by other means. She began a campaign of whispers and rumors that spread like smoke throughout the palace, the city, and the empire. The healer used black magic. She had bewitched the Sultan with potions. "The babies are demons, monsters. Childbirth will kill her. It is a punishment from Allah. Nala heard these words through her maid Layla, who told her everything with tears in her eyes. Don't listen to them, Nala would say, though inside she was trembling. They are just words, but words have power, and these words haunted her in her dreams. The 6th month brought complications. One night, Nahla woke up with sharp pains and bleeding. An emergency call was made to Hakim Yunus. The babies are fine, he announced after examining her, but she needs complete rest. No stress, no worries. Easier said than done. Rashid doubled the security. Now there were 4 eunuchs at her door and an imperial guard in the hallway. There were also tasters who tried every food before she touched it. It's too much, Nagla told him during one of her nightly visits. I feel like a prisoner. You are the most precious thing I have, he replied. You and what you carry inside you are everything to me. I will take no risks. What about you? You hardly sleep. You don't eat well. And you're wasting away. Rashid smiled. It was a paid but genuine smile. I've been wasting away for 10 years. At least now I have a reason to carry on. Nala took his hand. I don't want you to die before your children are born. I want you to see them grow up, teach them to ride, and tell them stories about the empire. Are you ordering me to take care of myself? I'm asking you. Rashid looked at her. There was something new in his eyes. He had never felt this way about any of his other wives. Love. Not the unbridled passion of poets or the burning desire of youthful nights. It was something deeper, calmer, and more real. I will. I promise. For them and for you. In the 7th month, Nala received an unexpected visitor. It was Fatma, an old friend from Aran. The guards let her in after a thorough search. The young woman entered, trembling and wide-eyed. Nahla threw herself into her arms. Allah be praised, she said. Are you all right, Fatma? How did you get here? The Sultan gave permission. I wrote him a letter begging to see you. I didn't think it would work, but they sat together as if it were old times again, although everything had changed. Look at you, said Fatma, looking at her bulging belly. You're going to be the Sultan's mother. I still can't believe it. The palace is talking about nothing else. Some hate you, others admire you, but everyone is waiting. Waiting for what? Fatma lowered her voice. The birth. If the babies are born healthy and resemble the Sultan, everything will change. But if something goes wrong, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Nal nodded. I know. I'm risking my life. You're not afraid, she said. I'm terrified every day and every night, but I can't give up. Not now, not after everything we've been through. Fatma took her hands. You're the bravest woman I know. I'm not brave, I'm just a mother. Mothers will do anything for their children. The 8th month arrived, bringing with it the cold of winter. The Bosphorus was covered in fog every morning. The gardens lost their flowers. The palace was filled with braziers and thick carpets. Nala could barely move. The 3 babies took up all the space in her womb. Breathing was difficult, sleeping was impossible, and eating was torture. But she persevered for them, for Rashid, and for the dream they were about to fulfill. Jim Yunus now visited her twice a day. Soon, and he told her, very soon. How soon? A week, maybe 2. The babies were ready. They were just waiting for the right moment. Nala closed her eyes and prayed. She prayed for a smooth delivery, for 3 healthy babies, and for a future she could barely imagine. And somewhere in the palace, Rashid was doing the same. 2 souls united by hope and waiting for a miracle, life in their children. On the night of 15th March 1548, the contractions began. Nala woke up drenched in sweat. A contraction shot through her body like lightning. She screamed. Layla ran to her side. It's coming! Call the Jakim! Tell the Sultan! Within minutes, the chambers were filled with activity. Servants ran around with hot water and clean cloths. Jakim Yunus arrived with his leather bag, followed by 2 experienced midwives. Then Rashid burst into the room, his face contorted. Although the rules dictated that men should not witness births, he was the Sultan. His rules were the only ones that mattered. I'm staying, he announced. My lord, it is not appropriate. A midwife began. I'm staying. No one argued further. The birth was brutal. There were 12 hours of contractions, screams, tears, and prayers. Nala felt her body splitting in two and her life slipping away with every push. Death was waiting for its moment. But she didn't give up. Each time the pain became unbearable, she looked at Rashid. He was by her side, holding her hand, wiping the sweat from her forehead, and whispering words of encouragement. "You can do it. You are the strongest woman I know. Our children are waiting for you." And she pushed again. The first baby arrived at dawn. A small but loud cry filled the room. "It's a boy," announced the Shakim, healthy and perfect. Rashid felt his legs give way. He had to lean against the wall. He had a son. But there was no time to celebrate. Nahla was still in labor. The second baby arrived an hour later. Another boy, smaller than the first but equally healthy, cried with all the strength of his tiny lungs. The midwives worked tirelessly. Nala was exhausted and as pale as a ghost. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. "I can't." "Yes, you can." Rashid squeezed her hand. "Just one more, Nala." The third baby was proving to be the most difficult. It was coming out breech. Yakim had to intervene, maneuvering with expert hands while Nagla screamed in pain. "Now, push now." One last superhuman effort, and then a cry. It was a boy, the third. The Yakim smiled. 3 boys, 3 heirs. It's a miracle. Rashid approached the table where the midwives were cleaning the newborns. 3 small bodies, 3 wrinkled faces, and 3 pairs of lungs screaming their arrival into the world. Then he saw them. Their features, the firm jaw, the straight nose, and the almond-shaped eyes, were his spitting image. There was no doubt. They were his children. Rashid fell to his knees beside Nahla's bed. Tears streamed down his face uncontrollably. The man who had conquered cities and ruled empires, and who had never shown weakness, was now crying like a child. "Thank you," he repeated over and over. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Exhausted but radiant, Nahla smiled weakly. "I told you I wasn't lying. I know, I always knew. In my heart, I always knew." The news spread like wildfire. Sultan Rashid has heirs, 3 triplet heirs. The miracle of Istanbul. The minaret bells rang out. Cannons fired celebratory salvos. The people took to the streets to celebrate. The empire has a future. Allah has blessed the Sultan. In the palace, the official wives remained silent. Safiye Jatun locked herself in her chambers and did not emerge for 3 days. Her rumor campaign had failed. The truth was undeniable. Faisal the vizier immediately changed sides. He was now the first to congratulate the Sultan and praise the beauty of the heirs. Cowards always know when to change direction. A week after the birth, Rashid named his eldest son Salim after his great-grandfather, the great conqueror, Mehmed II, and his second son Mehmed after Mehmed II, who took Constantinople. Ahmad, the third son, was named after his father. 3 names, 3 legacies, 3 futures. All had been born to a woman despised by the palace. The orphan from Konya, the gardener's daughter. 3 months after the birth, Sultan Rashid summoned the entire court. The great hall of Topkapi Palace shone like never before. Thousands of candles illuminated the golden mosaics. Persian carpets covered every inch of the marble floor. The air was filled with the scent of amber incense and rose water. The nobles arrived dressed in their finest attire. Ambassadors from distant kingdoms took their places of honor. Generals, judges, and the most respected imams were also present. Everyone was there. No one knew exactly what the Sultan was about to announce, but everyone suspected something. Nahla waited in an antechamber. She wore an emerald green silk dress embroidered with gold thread. A white gauze veil covered her hair and was held in place by a delicate tiara set with small diamonds. She had never looked so beautiful or so terrified. "Are you ready?" Rashid entered the antechamber. He wore a dark blue velvet ceremonial robe and the imperial turban adorned with a famous emerald the size of a quail's egg. His father's sword hung from his waist. He was the living image of power, but his eyes only saw her. "I don't know if I'll ever be ready for this," Nala confessed. "You will be, because you are stronger than you think." He approached her and took her hands. "A year ago, you were a garden servant. Today, you will be Sultana." "I don't care about the title, Rashid. I never did. I know, and that's why you deserve it. He kissed her forehead, soft, tender, ready. Nagla took a deep breath, ready. The doors to the great hall opened. Rashid entered first. He walked down the center aisle, hundreds of people bowing as he passed. He climbed onto the dais where the imperial throne awaited him. He sat down. He looked out at the crowd. Today was a historic day for the Ottoman Empire. His voice echoed through every corner of the room. For 10 years, this throne had been without an heir. For 10 years, our future had been uncertain. There was absolute silence. But Allah, in his infinite wisdom, heard my pleas. He sent me a blessing that no doctor could have predicted. 3 sons, 3 heirs, 3 miracles. 3 sons, 3 heirs, 3 miracles. Murmurs of approval rippled through the room. Those miracles were made possible by one woman. She came to this palace with nothing. No family, no wealth, and no power. But she had something more valuable than all of that. Rashid stood up. Faith, courage, and unwavering honesty. The side doors opened and Nala entered. She walked slowly down the aisle. She could feel the eyes of hundreds of people fixed on her. She could hear the whispers. She saw expressions of surprise, envy, and admiration. But she looked at no one except Rashid, her sultan, her love, and the father of her children. She climbed the steps to the dais and stopped in front of him. Nala bint Karim, Rashid announced. Before Allah and before this empire, I elevate you to the rank of Haseki Sultan, my imperial wife and mother of my heirs, Sultana of the Ottoman Empire. He extended his hand. In it, he held a crown. It was not the largest crown in the imperial treasury, nor was it the oldest or the most valuable. It was a new crown, crafted especially for her, white gold intertwined like the branches of a tree. In the center were 3 emeralds representing her 3 sons, surrounded by dozens of small diamonds that sparkled like stars. The crown of the miracle. Rashid placed it on her head, prompting the entire hall to erupt in applause. That night after the celebrations, Nala and Rashid were alone in their chambers. The babies slept in the next room, cared for by trusted wet nurses. The silence was comforting after the chaos of the day. Nehla took off her crown and examined it in the candlelight. I still can't believe it, she whispered. The what? A year ago, she had been picking herbs in a kanja field. Today, I am a sultana. Rashid sat down beside her. Do you regret it? Regret it? She asked, looking at him in surprise. I have 3 beautiful children. I have a husband who loves me and a purpose in life. Why would I regret it? Because you lost your freedom, your anonymity, and your peace. Nala smiled. I gained something better. I gained a home. They kissed long and deeply. When they broke apart, Rashid looked at her with an intensity that still made her tremble. I love you, he said. I should have told you sooner. I should have told you 1,000 times. But I was afraid. Even the great Sultan was afraid. The great Sultan is only human, and humans fear losing what they love most. Nala took his face in her hands. You won't lose me today, or tomorrow, or ever. Do you promise? I promise. And so ended the story of Nala, the orphan who became a mother and a sultana, the servant who gave the barren sultan what no one else could, 3 children and a family. 3 children, a family, a miracle. They say that she ruled alongside Rashid for 40 years, that her children grew up strong and wise, and that Selim became the next sultan, enjoying the most prosperous reign in history. They say that Nagla never forgot where she came from. They say that she built hospitals for the poor and founded schools for orphans. They say that she planted medicinal gardens in every corner of the empire. When she died at the age of 83, they say that all of Istanbul wept. Rashid had preceded her in death by just 3 months, and they say he was waiting for her on the other side. 2 souls who met by chance and chose to love each other forever. Istanbul, 1623. 75 years later, an elderly woman walked through the gardens of Topkapi Palace. She was Nala's great-granddaughter. Her name was Ice, and she was the official chronicler of the empire. She carried a book under her arm, its yellowing pages filled with elegant calligraphy. She sat down by the fountain where, according to legend, her great-grandparents had met. The water still flowed clear, and the rose bushes still bloomed. Aishi opened the book to the first page, which was dedicated to all women who believe in miracles and all men who learn to believe in them. Aishi smiled and began to read aloud, "To no one and to everyone. In the year of grace 1547, in the splendor of the Ottoman Empire, there lived a sultan without an heir and an orphan without a home. This is their story, the tale of the greatest miracle ever told. The words floated on the wind, crossed the gardens, passed through the palace walls, and reached the streets of Istanbul. They continued traveling through the years and centuries until they reached you. Now you too know the story of Nala, the Sultana of three miracles. And so ends the story of Nala, the orphan who became Sultana, the woman who gave the most powerful man in the empire the one thing money couldn't buy, a miracle. If this story touched your heart, give it a like. Hit the hype button so more people can learn about it. If you've made it this far, show me. Comment the word miracle and tell me which country or city you're listening from. I want to know where my fellow believers in happy endings are. See you in the next story, M.